To truly understand how essential Bitcoin's role is to our world today, we also need to understand what's going on in the crazy economy of our times. Let's take a look at the United States and its central bank, the Federal Reserve, or Fed as we will call them from now on, as they control the issuance of the dollar, which most countries in the world depend on. The US also strongly influences the direction of monetary policy in other economies, including Sweden. We then compare the Fed with the Riksbank in Sweden to see if there are any similarities. Central banks have virtually unlimited possibilities to increase the amount of money in their domestic currency. Since the financial crisis of 2008, central banks around the world have been creating huge amounts of money and then buy assets in financial markets to prevent liquidity problems. In order to prevent liquidity problems, this is done to combat deflation, which is the negative pressure on the economy that, according to economists, creates lower prices, higher unemployment, lower incomes, and so on in a vicious cycle that repeats itself and creates prolonged economic depression until central banks intervene again. Note that not all economists agree that a central bank is even necessary, or whether deflation is a bad thing in the long run. For an alternative view, you can visit the Ludwig von Mises Institute at mises.se. This graph shows how much currency the Fed has created. From the time the Fed became officially operational in the year until the height of the last financial crisis they had created just under this amount that took barely 2 months to double in the Lehman Brothers crash. After continued money printing and March, printed around $2,000 billion in 1 month. There is no limit to how much central banks can intervene in financial markets. As the head of the Minneapolis Fed, Neil Kashkari, said in an interview with 60 Minutes during there is an infinite amount of cash in the Federal Reserve. We will do whatever we need to do to make sure there is enough cash in the banking system. Like the Fed, the Swedish Riksbank has created money to support the economy. During Corona, the Riksbank has gone further than it ever has before, and for the first time started buying up municipal and corporate bonds, commercial paper and treasury bills. If central banks print so much money, why haven't we seen unusually high inflation? In other words, have the prices of goods and services gone up in society? Well, yes. The fact that central banks are printing money is not enough to cause for the prices of goods and services to go up in society. The question is, where the printed money goes, does it stay in the banking system? Does the population benefit from this money? Is the money used to buy goods and services? If the money is not used to purchase goods and services in society, then demand is not positively affected. So we don't see significant inflation in consumer goods, but we do see significant inflation in other parts of society. Annika Winst, chief economist at Nordea, said in an interview with Bulletin that the expansionary policy benefits individuals who are in the housing market or people who are saving in shares and funds, for example. They are becoming more and more wealthy, while those who are outside are finding it increasingly difficult to get in. This leads to widening gaps in society as asset prices rise rapidly. Those trying to enter the housing market are finding it increasingly difficult, and those who are unfamiliar with shares and mutual funds are left behind. To sum up, it is not enough to create a lot of money to trigger general inflation. Where money is used, inflation increases, and it is currently being used to increase asset prices in society. Most people are not currently concerned about high inflation in food and other necessities in our relatively secure existence in the Western world. This could certainly change. But what about everyone else? Right now in August, annual inflation in Venezuela is over 5,000%. In Sudan it is 350%. In Lebanon it is 120%. In Zimbabwe it is 100%. In Iran and Argentina it is 50%. In Angola it is 25%. In Turkey it is 17%. Many people in the world are suffering because their savings are constantly losing value. They need an alternative. Unfortunately, this phenomenon is nothing new. This image shows the change in the silver content of Roman coins between 250 and 250 AD. At the end of this period, many more coins were needed to buy the same amount of goods in society. Those people who had saved their financial energy in the old coins became richer compared to their fellow citizens who had not preserved their purchasing power over time. A more recent example can be found during the hyperinflation in Germany between 92 and 93, when gold held its value in relation to the increase in the price of food and other necessities. Those who had saved their economic energy in the domestic currency lost all their purchasing power, while those who had savings in gold retained much of their purchasing power. They also became richer, because purchasing power is economic energy, and energy cannot be destroyed, only transformed. The economic energy released from those with the wrong savings was transferred to those with savings of lasting value. Hyperinflation is essentially a 19th century phenomenon. The same pattern is repeated every time. Those who have saved in the unsound money lose their purchasing power over time, and those who have saved in gold, or at least other currencies that don't experience as much inflation, have retained more of their purchasing power over time. The main task of central banks is to maintain confidence in the financial system. As soon as confidence in the value of a currency is lost, there is nothing a central bank can do to stop the depreciation. People will get rid of the currency as soon as they can if they suspect the value will not last. Inflation expectations carry a lot of weight, and central banks do everything they can to keep the market calm. Finally, to balance our discussion, actually in defense of today's currencies, their use in place of gold is not just a result of fraud. Although they came about because of a broken promise to deliver gold, which is a fraud, but there is another explanation for why Fiat has managed to cling on for so long. And in a global and digital world, the use of gold is clumsy compared to the currencies we use today, especially when it comes to international payments and transfers of value. We don't have to worry about shipping costs, storage solutions, and spending resources to verify the authenticity of the gold. What gold has historically been good at is transferring value over time. In other words, people have maintained their purchasing power over time while using gold. With central bank currencies, you choose to sacrifice purchasing power over time to optimize the usefulness of transferring value over space, especially over longer distances. When we talk about Bitcoin in the next section, we will see how Bitcoin solves this problem by optimizing for both time and space.